You know a vacation's gone horribly wrong when the safest part of the trip was the airport security line. Somehow, people keep turning relaxation into a full-contact sport against common sense. Sunburns that look medically impossible, wildlife encounters that should have triggered a Darwin Award nomination, and tourists who treat warning signs like optional decor. And just when you think humanity can't possibly invent a new way to embarrass itself on foreign soil, trust me, we haven't even warmed up yet. The real disasters are still ahead. 1. A family once arrived at a tropical beach paradise and immediately demanded a refund because the ocean water is too salty, as if Poseidon himself was supposed to tone it down for their comfort. I love how they walked straight into nature's largest, most consistent chemical mixture and decided the problem was customer service. The best part? They tried to complain to the hotel, insisting the resort should have filtered the sea, since the brochure said crystal clear water. Technically true, just not Brita filter clear. I watched them argue this with the confidence of people who think Google Maps should update based on their mood. And somehow, they maintained absolute belief that they were the normal ones, and the entire planet's ocean content was the real issue. Humanity, undefeated since forever. 2. A tourist in Iceland once tried to pet a wild puffin because it looked soft, which is exactly how a sentence starts right before a hospital bill arrives. She wasn't pushed by friends, pressured by the group, or influenced by alcohol. No, this was raw, uncut personal decision-making at work. She marched right up to a cliffside bird known for defending its nest like it's auditioning for Game of Thrones, and then acted shocked when it responded by treating her finger like a snack sampler. The tour guide told her dozens of times, "They bite." Her response? "Well, not me." "Yes, Karen, because puffins carefully evaluate your zodiac sign before attacking." Honestly, the puffin showed restraint. If someone tried to pet me on vacation, I'd bite too. 3. There was a guy who went snorkeling without sunscreen because he believed sunburns can't happen underwater. Like UV rays take a coffee break the moment you dip below the surface. He bobbed around the shallows for 3 hours, came back looking like a microwave lobster, and insisted it was the snorkel company's fault, because no one explained that sunlight works differently here, right? Because in his personal universe, the laws of physics should clock out during vacation. He spent the rest of the trip wrapped in aloe vera like a disgruntled burrito, loudly explaining to everyone that the ocean betrayed him. Not the sun, not his choices, the ocean. And to this day, he probably believes his burn came from some rare tropical heat beam known only to aquatic locals. 4. One couple rented a convertible in the Arizona desert, then returned it furious because the air conditioning doesn't work when the roof is down. They drove through 112-degree heat with the top open, blasting the AC like they were conducting an experiment on atmospheric futility. Then, sweating like rotisserie chickens, they stomped back to the rental desk to deliver the shocking news that cold air tends to escape when there's no ceiling. The employee politely explained basic thermodynamics, and these two acted like he'd personally sabotaged their romantic getaway. They demanded a refund, a replacement, and, my favorite, a written apology from whoever designed convertibles wrong. Honestly, they should have received a medal for discovering the world's least surprising scientific fact. 5. A tourist in Venice used Google Maps to navigate the canals and became outraged when it didn't warn him that the routes were water. He walked confidently down a narrow alley, turned left, and stepped directly into a canal with the tragic slow-motion energy of a man betrayed by technology. He even shouted, "This wasn't marked!" as if Venetian waterways were pop-up traps randomly generated by the city. Locals watched him climb out, dripping and furious, yelling at his phone like it had personally pushed him. He later wrote a 1-star review of Venice, the entire city, for being poorly labeled. Imagine being so committed to not learning how canals work that you blame the municipality for water being wet. 6. A guy booked a remote wilderness retreat in Alaska and then complained loudly for days that there was nothing to do. He kept asking for nearby malls, nightlife, and at least one Starbucks, like Alaska should rearrange its geography for his convenience. On the third day, he begged the staff to turn the Wi-Fi up, which is not how Wi-Fi works, but fine. The kicker? He chose this trip because he wanted an authentic off-the-grid experience. And boy, did he hate every second of authenticity. He left a review calling the untouched wilderness boring and less impressive than expected, which feels like the ultimate insult you can give a mountain. 7. A woman in Hawaii tried to take a selfie with an active lava flow because it didn't look that hot from where she was standing. Scientists warn about this constantly, but apparently the real danger is self-confidence. She marched past multiple signs, ignored a rope barrier, and approached molten rock like she was meeting a celebrity. When the heat blasted her in the face, she screamed, dropped her phone, and yelled at park rangers that the lava was too aggressive. Yes, that's right. She scolded geological activity for not being more photogenic. Her phone did not survive, but honestly, she had it coming. Lava doesn't negotiate. 8. One family at a national park complained that the wildlife wasn't cooperating because the bears refused to come closer for pictures. They actually asked a ranger if he could call them over, like bears are employees on break. The ranger, fighting the visible urge to quit his job on the spot, explained that bears are not, in fact, Disney characters waiting for cues. The family rolled their eyes and said the park was disappointing because the animals lacked personality. The bears, meanwhile, stayed far away, likely sensing the level of stupidity radiating off that picnic blanket. Smart bears. 9. A man went on a beach vacation and decided to rent a jet ski despite having never even driven a bicycle confidently. He took off like a cartoon character, discovering velocity for the first time, immediately veering into a restricted zone marked by roughly 40 giant red buoys. He later claimed the buoys were hard to see, which is interesting because they were the size and color of an angry tomato. After being towed back by professionals who clearly do this several times a day for people just like him, he announced the jet ski must have been defective because it kept going forward. Yes, sir, that is indeed what they do. 10. A woman in Greece got sunburned so badly on day 1 that she spent the rest of the trip indoors, and then left a review claiming the hotel didn't warn her the sun is stronger in Europe. She insisted the front desk should have told her, the sunlight is different here, which it is not. Same star, same planet, same UV rays. Her argument was delivered with the passion of someone who thinks sunscreen is a scam invented by Big Lotion. She declared she would never return to a country with unsafe sunlight. I assume she's living underground now, somewhere in the continental US where the safe American sun lives. 11. At a resort pool, a man attempted to impress his family by doing a backflip off a ledge he clearly had no physical business standing on. Gravity, being extremely reliable, introduced itself immediately. He slipped, flailed, and landed halfway in the water, halfway on his dignity. Lifeguards ran over while his family quietly pretended not to know him. The best part? He insisted the ledge was slipperier than advertised, implying someone had personally sabotaged his midlife crisis gymnastics routine. After being helped out, he demanded to speak to management about unsafe acrobatic conditions. Sir, that's a pool, not Cirque du Soleil. 12. One guy on a Caribbean cruise jumped off the boat to swim to the island faster because he misread how distance works. He saw land on the horizon and thought, yeah, I can totally make that. Spoiler, he could not. The ship had to stop, turn around, deploy a rescue boat, and retrieve a man who apparently believed he was Aquaman's less gifted cousin. He told crew members the ocean was deeper than expected. That is often the case, yes. He spent the rest of the cruise under watch because anyone capable of voluntarily abandoning a perfectly functioning ship probably needs a helmet and supervision. 13. A tourist in Japan ordered sushi and confidently told the chef it wasn't fresh enough because it was cold. He assumed fresh fish should be room temperature, like something that has been sitting on a windowsill in a Disney movie. The chef, a man whose entire existence revolves around serving fish correctly, stared at him with the quiet fury of every culinary ancestor behind him. The tourist insisted the restaurant was fake traditional, unaware that he had essentially accused decades of Japanese cuisine of being wrong about itself. He stormed out, announcing he'd find a place with actually fresh sushi. Godspeed, buddy. 14. A woman in the mountains genuinely believed altitude sickness was caused by breathing too much mountain air, so she spent her entire trip taking tiny, dramatic sips of oxygen like she was rationing it for winter. When she inevitably felt worse, she complained to the staff that the mountains were too high and should be scaled down for tourism. This woman tried to negotiate with elevation. She eventually demanded a refund because the air wasn't compatible with her lungs. I don't know how to break it to her, but it's the same air. The mountains didn't invent a new flavor. 15. A man in Florida rented a kayak, paddled confidently into a mangrove forest, and then immediately got lost because he assumed all the paths would eventually loop back. Nature, shockingly, does not operate like a shopping mall. After 2 hours of circling the same tree like it was a boss fight he couldn't win, he called the rental company in a panic, insisting their kayaks didn't steer correctly. A rescue boat eventually found him spinning in slow circles, blaming the wind, the kayak, the trees, and possibly the concept of direction itself. Everything except the fact that he didn't know where he was going. Honestly, GPS probably resigned mid-trip. 16. A man at a luxury rainforest resort complained that the jungle noises were too loud at night, as if nature should respect quiet hours. He marched to the front desk at 2 a.m., demanding someone shut the animals up, because apparently parrots, frogs, and whatever else was living out there were supposed to calmly pause their entire ecosystem for Chad's beauty sleep. The staff tried explaining that wildlife cannot be muted like a YouTube ad, but he insisted they file a noise complaint with whoever manages the forest. When told that was not a person, he said, "Well, someone needs to take responsibility." "Yes, sir. Let me go wake up the rainforest manager to scold the monkeys for laughing too loud." The next morning he requested earplugs, but only if they were eco-friendly, because hypocrisy looks great on vacation. 17. A woman on a Northern Lights tour was furious when the aurora didn't show up on schedule, because she believed the guides controlled it with apps. She pointed at the sky like she was reprimanding a lazy stage crew, insisting the lights were late, and demanding a refund because the universe failed to meet her expectations. The guides calmly explained solar activity doesn't operate by reservation, but she countered with, "Then why do you sell tickets?" Exactly like someone who thinks meteorology is a subscription service. She kept pointing her phone at the empty sky, tapping the screen like she was refreshing an Instagram feed that owed her cosmic content. Her parting comment, "I'll just come back when you guys get your light show working again," which suggests she believes the sun needs better customer support. 18. A guy accidentally tipped over his own suitcase at the airport baggage claim and then accused the airline of mishandling it as though gravity was an employee. He tried to stage a dramatic performance, pointing to a tiny scuff on the corner like it was forensic evidence in a murder trial. He demanded compensation, an apology from the pilot, and, my favorite, a recorded statement promising it would never happen again. The airline rep stared at him with the frozen smile of someone calculating how many years they have until retirement. The suitcase fell because he kicked it. That's it. But he insisted the carousel was designed wrong, and that he should not be held responsible for unexpected bag momentum. Imagine believing you are the only stable object in motion in an entire airport. Bold, wrong, but bold. 19. A tourist on a whale-watching tour complained that the whales weren't breaching enough and followed the captain around the boat, asking if he could call a different whale. She treated a 40-ton wild animal like a customer support representative who went on break without permission. When the whales finally appeared, because they were, living their own lives, she muttered, "Ugh, that's it," as if she expected them to tap dance or announce their presence with a theme song. She later left a review calling the whales lazy and unmotivated, which is stunning because these creatures migrate thousands of miles while she once got tired, walking from the buffet to the lounge chair. If anyone on that boat lacked motivation, it wasn't the whales. 20. A man in Mexico asked a lifeguard why the beach didn't have shark warning lights, like traffic signals but for apex predators. He believed sharks politely swim around with some kind of built-in Bluetooth connection, notifying lifeguards of their location. When told this technology does not exist, he theorized the resort was cutting corners. He then asked if they could turn down the waves, because he wanted calmer water for paddleboarding and the ocean was being dramatic. The man tried to paddle out twice, fell both times, and declared the sea was personally targeting him. Honestly, if the ocean were targeting him, I'd understand. 21. A couple on safari asked the guide to get closer to the lions, not for the view, but because they wanted more dramatic selfies. The guide politely explained that lions are shockingly dangerous. The couple insisted they'd be safe because they have really good cameras, which is not a safety device so much as a future headline. They kept leaning out of the vehicle, attempting to lure the lions with various noises that sounded like discount animal impressions. One lion glanced over with a look that said, "I could end this tour right now, but honestly, not worth the calories." When the guide finally refused to go any closer, the couple called the safari overly cautious. Meanwhile, every living lion in that savanna deserves hazard pay for tolerating tourists. 22. A woman booked a cabin in the mountains and then panicked because the woods were too close to the property. She claimed she saw a tree leaning suspiciously, which might be the most unintentionally poetic way to describe nature doing absolutely nothing. She demanded the staff remove several trees so she could feel safer, essentially asking the forest to socially distance itself. When they refused, she called the cabin false advertising because she didn't expect actual wilderness. She spent the rest of the trip peering out the window like she was expecting a tree to file a restraining order against her. Honestly, the tree should have. 23. A man on a guided hike asked if they could walk downhill the whole time because he didn't want to get sweaty. When informed that hills, by definition, go both ways, he suggested they reroute the trail, as if nature could be reinstalled like Google Maps. Halfway up, he dramatically announced he couldn't continue because his legs were refusing, which is coincidentally how most people feel about him. He later told other hikers the guide pushed him too hard, even though the guide was power walking backward while politely explaining how Earth's topology works. The man's final review complained the mountain was poorly designed for beginners. God help us all if he ever discovers stairs. 24. A family visiting a glacier complained it was colder than expected. They arrived in tank tops, shivering violently, looking at the ice like it had personally betrayed them. They asked the guide whether the glacier could be warmed up a little, because the vacation brochure made it look sunnier. The guide explained glaciers are, famously, giant chunks of ice. They responded with, "Well, it doesn't have to be this cold." One kid even poked the glacier and yelled, "Why is it wet?" proving that maybe we shouldn't let people near geological formations without a quiz. The glacier, meanwhile, remained stoic, enduring humanity the same way it endured the Ice Age, frozen and silently judging. 25. A couple on a riverboat tour insisted the guide stop in the middle of the river because they wanted to grab a quick swim. They seemed shocked to learn that rivers have currents, like this was brand new information discovered moments before disaster. When the guide refused, the couple argued that the water looked calm, which is what every doomed explorer says right before becoming a safety warning video. They eventually tried dipping in anyway, immediately got swept sideways, and had to be hauled back by a crew that now regretted every career choice that led them here. Their takeaway from the incident? The river was moving way too fast for a river. The river disagreed, quietly, forcefully, naturally. 26. A man visiting a desert took a full insulated winter jacket just in case, because he didn't trust sand. He proceeded to wear it the entire morning, sweating like a rotisserie chicken, while insisting he was built for extreme environments. He wasn't. By noon, he was dehydrated, dizzy, and complaining the desert didn't have enough shade stations, as if the Sahara should adopt mall architecture. He eventually demanded the guide turn the sun down, which is a bold request normally reserved for supervillains and toddlers. By sunset, he declared deserts overrated, blaming the experience on poor climate management. Yes, climate management. The desert is still laughing. 27. A woman decided to collect authentic ocean water in a mason jar to bring home as a souvenir. Cute idea, until she tried to take it through international airport security. She argued with TSA for 15 minutes, insisting that since the water was from nature, it shouldn't count as a liquid. Several agents considered quitting on the spot. She even suggested they just pour out enough to make it legal, which is not how anything works. When finally told she had to discard it, she dramatically whispered, "This place hates culture." Meanwhile, the ocean was out there, containing approximately 1 nonillion more molecules than the jar she was mourning. She could have refilled it literally anywhere, along an entire coastline. But no, this jar was special because she'd personally scooped it with her hand, on purpose. 28. A man in Italy rented a scooter despite never having operated any vehicle more complicated than a shopping cart. 10 minutes later, he was lodged between two parked cars like a confused sardine, insisting the scooter just went wherever it wanted. Locals watched him wrestle the handlebars while yelling, "It's not listening," as though he expected voice command functionality. When the rental staff arrived, he blamed the entire incident on European traffic logic, even though he crashed into objects that were not moving. His final comment? "These streets are too narrow for scooters." Meanwhile, scooters have been navigating those exact streets longer than his entire bloodline. 29. A couple visiting a national monument complained that the landmark looked smaller in person, like someone had catfished them with accurate photographs. They stood there, arms crossed, insisting the monument should have been twice as tall, because that's what we imagined. They even asked a ranger if it had shrunk over time, which is not how rock works. They left disappointed, saying the whole thing felt less impressive than Instagram, unaware that comparing reality to social media is the fastest route to lifelong misery.